In the summer of 2019, a man turned down a $150,000 landscaping contract in the Texas Hill Country, one of the most sought-after commercial deals that season, and instead went home and bought 40 goats. His neighbors thought he had lost his mind. His own brother stopped returning his calls. And the company that got the contract instead? They celebrated with champagne while this man stood in a dusty pen, shoveling straw and learning how to bottle feed a newborn kid at 3 in the morning. But here's what nobody saw coming. 3 years later, when the worst drought in over a century scorched the Texas Hill Country and sent that landscaping company into bankruptcy, this man was running the most in-demand land management operation in 4 counties. This is the story of Marcus Delaney and the 40 goats that changed everything. Fredericksburg, Texas isn't just wine country. It's working land, ranches that stretch for miles, cedar and juniper so thick in some places you can barely see the sky, and a farming culture so deep-rooted that families measure their legacy not in years, but in generations. Marcus Delaney had grown up on the edge of that world. His father had worked land but never owned it. His grandfather had baled hay on someone else's ranch for 35 years. Marcus was determined to do something different, to own something, to build something. By 2019, he had done exactly that. He ran a small but steady landscaping business out of Fredericksburg, with a crew of 7, a couple of aging trucks, and a reputation for reliability. He wasn't rich, but he was building. And then the Kerrville Municipal Parks Commission reached out with an offer that made his hands shake when he read it. A $150,000 annual lawn and grounds maintenance contract. Renewable for 5 years. That was potentially $750,000. A life-changing number. Marcus sat with that contract for 2 weeks. He drove the properties. He ran the numbers. He even shook the hand of the Parks Commissioner at a follow-up meeting. And then he walked away. Not because the money wasn't real. Not because he didn't need it. He walked away because of what he had been reading for the past 3 years in every farming journal, soil report, and land management study he could get his hands on. The hill country was drying out. Not slowly, rapidly. The aquifer levels were dropping. Rainfall cycles were shortening. The cedar and juniper, invasive species that had crowded out native grasses for decades, were drinking the land dry. And nobody in the landscaping world was paying attention, because the grass was still green enough and the contracts were still coming in. But Marcus had grown up watching that land, and he knew the green wouldn't last. He also knew something else, something he had learned from an old-timer named Gene Polk out in Mason County, who had kept a herd of Spanish and Boer cross goats for 40 years. Gene told him one afternoon over a fence post, "Boy, when this land turns on people, the only thing that's going to save it is something that walks on 4 legs and eats brush." Marcus never forgot that, so instead of signing the contract, he drove 45 minutes south, handed a breeder in Bandera County $18,000, and came home with 40 mixed-breed brush goats loaded in a rented trailer. Word travels fast in a small community. By the following Monday, everybody knew. His competitor, Ricky Vasquez, the man whose company ultimately won the Kerrville contract, made no secret of what he thought. At a Chamber of Commerce mixer that August, he told a table full of people that Marcus had gone soft in the head. The story got back to Marcus within 48 hours. A local feed store owner near Highway 87 started calling him Goat Boy. Not meanly, exactly, but the nickname stuck and carried the unmistakable weight of condescension. Marcus's own mother sat him down at her kitchen table and asked him, quietly and seriously, if he was going through something. Something personal, something she needed to know about. He just smiled and told her he was fine, that he was playing a long game. She didn't look convinced. What most people don't understand about brush goats is that they are not passive animals. They are workers. A well-managed herd of 40 goats can clear an acre of dense cedar and mesquite in a matter of weeks, eating the invasive species down to their roots, opening up the soil, allowing native grasses to breathe and return. It's called targeted grazing, and in land management circles, it's considered one of the most effective and sustainable tools available. But in Fredericksburg in 2019, most people had never heard of it. Marcus spent that first year learning everything the hard way. He lost 3 goats to predators before he invested in a livestock guardian dog, a Great Pyrenees he named Dust. He dealt with hoof rot, fencing failures, And one particularly catastrophic night, when a storm blew a section of pen down, and he spent 4 hours in the rain, chasing animals across a neighbor's property with a flashlight. But he also started landing small jobs. A 200-acre ranch outside of Llano, with a cedar problem so severe the owner hadn't seen native grass in 12 years. A vineyard in Stonewall that needed its fence lines cleared without chemicals. A wildlife management property near Junction, whose owner was trying to bring back white-tailed deer habitat. The results were undeniable. The ranchers talked, and the calls started coming in. The summer of 2022 arrived in the Texas Hill Country like something out of scripture. No rain fell in June. July was worse. By August, the region was in a state of exceptional drought, the most severe classification on the U.S. Drought Monitor scale. The Pedernales River dropped to a trickle. Ranchers in Gillespie and Kerr counties were selling off cattle they couldn't afford to feed. Water trucking services had waiting lists weeks long. And the landscaping companies? The ones that had built their businesses on green, irrigated lawns and manicured commercial grounds? They were bleeding. The Kerrville municipal contract, the one Marcus had turned down, became a liability overnight. The Parks Commission suspended non-essential irrigation to comply with water restrictions. Maintenance became nearly impossible. By October, Ricky Vasquez's company had lost 3 of its biggest accounts. By the following spring, he had let go of his entire crew and quietly shuttered the business. Meanwhile, Marcus Delaney's phone didn't stop ringing. Because here's what the drought revealed, in the most brutal and honest way possible. The land that had been managed with goats was recovering. It was breathing. The native grasses that Marcus's herds had allowed to return were holding soil moisture better than anything a sprinkler system could replicate. The ranches he had cleared of invasive brush had better water retention. The root systems were deeper. In a drought, the land that had been grazed the right way was the land that survived. Word spread beyond Gillespie County. Land managers and ranchers from as far as the Panhandle started making inquiries. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension reached out to feature Marcus in a case study on targeted grazing as a drought mitigation strategy. A reporter from the San Antonio Express-News drove up and spent 2 days following him around. The boy who had been called Goat Boy was now being called something else entirely, a pioneer. By 2023, Marcus Delaney was running a herd of over 180 animals, had expanded his operation to serve clients across the Edwards Plateau, and had taken on 2 apprentices, young men from Kerrville who wanted to learn the trade. He never gloated. That was the thing people mentioned most when they talked about him. He never once said, "I told you so." Not publicly, not that anyone could find. When asked about the landscaping contract he had turned down, he would simply shrug and say, "I just trusted what the land was telling me." The land had been talking for years. Most people just weren't willing to listen. Marcus listened. And 40 goats made him the most unlikely success story in the Texas Hill Country. A man who bet on patience, on biology, on the slow and unglamorous work of restoration, and won. The story of Marcus Delaney is proof that the most powerful moves in farming don't always look impressive at first. They look crazy. They look like failure. They look like a man buying goats with money he could have spent on something safe. But farming has always rewarded the people who pay attention, to the soil, to the seasons, to the long arc of the land, while everyone else is chasing short-term contracts and easy money. If this story reminded you that doing things differently isn't the same as doing things wrong, if it gave you a little fire to keep building your own operation your own way, then this channel is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now. Every week we bring you real stories from real farmers, the underdogs, the innovators, the people rewriting what it means to work the land. You do not want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, trust the land. Trust the process. We'll see you in the next one.